So before we begin the first episode, please excuse me for my background. I mean, it's the room that I live in my house in Bangalore, and it's sort of unkempt right now. But it's my natural surroundings, and I'm somewhere that I'm very comfortable. So I thought that I mean, why not? I will definitely try and increase the production value as episodes go. But to start off, I think it's a good place to start personally. So, today I'm going to review a documentary series that I watched on Netflix about a couple of months back, sometime in the beginning of October. It's called A Perfect Crime. It's a German documentary show which focuses on the still unsolved murder of a capitalist by the name of Detlev Rohwedder. Please forgive me if I'm pronouncing it wrong, but the overarching theme of the show is to talk about how the crime happened and why it still remains unsolved today. Why I liked this television series is because number one, it beautifully sort of builds context. It's not a traditional build up, but because this was a crime which involved a lot of geopolitical factors, it was a crime that took place right after the Berlin Wall fell. So there's a lot of context that needs to be provided to someone who is not even familiar with Germany and its history. So I think it does that very well. It consists of 4 episodes. I think the first episode primarily focuses on the two sides of West Germany, the two sides of Germany, which is East Germany and West Germany. What were the differences in the kind of lifestyle, the politics? Uh, what was the plan essentially to sort of make the transition smooth between these two sides after the Berlin Wall is set to be demolished? So there was a lot of confusion that existed at that time because I think the German wall fell in 1990 or 1991, but the transition process was something that was not really smooth. It was because West Germany was controlled by the Allied forces. East was primarily controlled by Russia, and the lifestyle in East was abominable. People did not have enough income. They did not have proper food to eat. Uh, a decision was taken also, if I'm not wrong, and it's focused very highly in the show itself, to sort of privatize a lot of industries which were in the East. So let me tell you who this guy was, who Detlev Rohwedder was. So there is an agency. Let me just pull up the name of the agency. Yes, the agency was called True Hand, and it was an agency that was primarily tasked with the responsibility of privatizing industries that existed in East Germany, so that these industries could be brought back up. They could be funded better because the government did not have enough money to fund these industries. So they figured that giving it to private players will enhance the conditions in which the industry has to sort of thrive in East Germany if they have to. So True Hand was an agency that was set up by the government to help aid this process. So Detlev Rohwedder was actually a big businessman who then eventually went on to become a member of the Social Democratic Party uh, in Germany, and he was essentially then given the task, because he became part of the political party later on. He was taught to know about managerial tactics that are needed to sort of run an agency at this level, even though he came from a very uh, affluent business background. So he was put in charge of this agency, and there was the documentary talks about both sides, what he tried to do and what people thought of his actions. So when you watch the series, you'll know both sides of the story. I think it's very well depicted. They then move on to the actual crime itself, because he was murdered in his house in Dusseldorf, uh, with someone taking a very precise shot at him using a gun from quite a distance outside his house. And they knew exactly which his room was, uh, which was the window, where he used to stand by the window, all of that. So they had done a lot of reconnaissance uh, to sort of come up with a modus operandi and then execute the assassination. There were a lot of suspects in the killing itself, but because, I mean, the most shocking fact was the perpetrators actually left a lot of clues. Like, I think they left behind some clothing, or some they left behind a letter. That letter was stamped with the RAF's stamp. The RAF is essentially the Red Army faction, which is a sort of an ultra left wing Antifa kind of organization who used to create a lot of havoc in East Germany at that time. So they were thought to be the ones who executed the assassination. But then, after a lot of investigation, even though the letter seemed genuine, there was a conclusion made that the RAF might not be the ones who did it. Someone else might have done it, and then they are looking to put it on the RAF. So the documentary actually interviews a lot of people from the RAF itself, who were actually part of the RAF at that time, and they used to explain, okay, how was RAF, what was the sort of working of the RAF at that time, and why they think that the RAF might not be behind this, because there's not a lot of substantial proof to prove that it was the RAF. So, as I was saying, Roveda himself was considered to be sort of a, how can I put it, a capitalist, in the sense that workers in East Germany thought that, under privatized conditions, their working conditions will get worse. So there was some sort of resistance, and there was also belief that someone from the working class, who never belonged to any party as such, also could have committed the crime. But after finding the cartridge from the gun that was used, I think it was a gun that was supplied by the NATO. It was it's a 7.62 into 51 NATO standard caliber rifle. So nobody from the common man can have access to ammunition like this. So it must have been someone with military ties. It must have been someone who is associated with a faction like RAF. But the police still has no clue. I think I read a recent report, I think in the year 2002 or 2001. In 2001, there was some sort of DNA analysis. I think even the documentary talks about this, where certain strands of the hair were sort of examined from the crime scene. I think there's definitely a scene in the documentary about this, which belonged to someone called Wolfgang Grams, who was an RAF member. But I think at that time, the head of the courts, I think he is the Attorney General, did not sort of accept this as enough proof to prove that the RAF was behind the killings. Because he was the head of True Hand, Roveda is considered sort of a visionary in terms of trying to change the financial system of East Germany after the fall of the Berlin Wall, because conditions honestly weren't that great. And it is something I learned as well, because in history class we learned that, okay, I mean, the Berlin Wall fell and Germany was united, but it wasn't as simple as that. There's a lot of planning that's needed for a move like this, and there was no contemporary precedent. So He is definitely considered a visionary, and his death was shocking to a lot of people, especially people in Truhan, because they looked up to him. Surprisingly, they haven't been able to find out the actual killer even today. So today's recommendation, or today's documentary that I reviewed, was A Perfect Crime. You can stream it on Netflix. It's a 4-part documentary series about a country whom we deem to be very, very efficient, whose history we normally associate with just Nazism, but people have moved on from there, and they have faced a lot of other problems uh, after that as well. So it mixes a crime and and the politics of that time very beautifully. So please watch A Perfect Crime on Netflix, and stay tuned and join in next week for another recommendation. But this was episode 1, and it was very fun for me to sort of do this. I will come better prepared with notes about the next documentary or next podcast or whatever I'll be reviewing next week. I'll be much better prepared. But thank you for sticking through the entire length of the video if you have. And please subscribe and please comment on what you'd like to see going into the future videos. So thank you guys. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned. This is Dr. Doc signing off.